Hello, and welcome to part 2 of the Shaping the Budget module. In this demo, we will be walking through how we get to a rough cut of a budget, a first draft that would then allow you to start working in whatever the grant formatting is that is required for the specific grant you're working on. We're going to walk you through step by step how we would approach that and some considerations along the way. So let's jump in. We always begin by looking at the work plan again. Often what we like to do is go line by line and seeing what sort of budget items are we going to need to be able to accomplish the grant. So let's just jump right in. There's 2 objectives for this grant. The first around establishing a blueberry aggregation network, and the second around installing upgraded freezer and cooling facilities to be able to handle that increase. If we're looking at a budget, and we start thinking about that first objective, we know we're going to need staff time. We're going to have to get, interviews with farmers, potential buyers. We're going to need participation from those farmers. We might need travel time to get to each of those conversations along the way. And for the purpose of time, we had pre-filled some of these in so you can see. But as we prepare for and secure contracts with farmers, again, we're going to need kind of a similar set of requirements. We might also engage the food safety consultant. As we acquire a refrigerated truck and hire a driver, we're going to need to lease that truck or purchase it, depending on what the grant allows for. In the example we're going to use, it's going to be a lease of a truck during the 2 years of the grant period that we're looking at. And then, we're going to, throughout this whole time, continue to need staff, continue to need participation. With the second objective, again, let's look at our activities. So we're going to upgrade storage facilities and cooler to support the expanded operation. We're going to install an IQF freezer, and we're going to upgrade food safety compliance. So again, we have these pre-filled, but just so everyone can see, we're going to need that cooler, obviously. We're going to need that freezer. We're going to need to engage CoolMax refrigeration for our installation. We are going to need additional staff time, most likely. That's something we didn't include there. But staff time to coordinate with the refrigeration team, make sure access is there, provide training or participate in training so that they know what's going on. So once you have these, we usually just call it budget notes over here on the side of the work plan. This helps you then think about line by line, what sort of budget items are we going to need? As you can see with this grant, we're pretty heavily weighted towards staff participation in that first step. You're trying to build that aggregation. The second aspect is there's going to be a decent amount of equipment purchased. Again, make sure your grant allows for this equipment purchase. This sometimes it's called specialty purpose equipment, which allows you to buy some things you wouldn't otherwise be able to. And then we're going to engage some contractors along the way. So let's turn to our fillable rough cut budget. This is a budget template we often use in-house typically for 3-year grants. In this case, we're only looking at 2 years of actual activity in the grant budget based off the Gantt chart that we created. So with this budget, what you'll see is each category laid out. And again, we kind of pre-filled a little bit of the categories, the individual items under the categories, but you're obviously welcome to change that, build that out. Keep in mind that this is just a basic spreadsheet. because we have found that that's easiest for folks to use. But when you start adding or deleting rows, sometimes that might impact some of the recreated formulas. So always double check your subtotals and your totals here at the end to make sure that everything is added up. In this example, we're gonna have two assumptions. The first assumption is that the grant maximum, the maximum the federal grant will reimburse you for, is $400,000. So the grant has to be below $400,000, the federal request. The second item that we are going to, or the second assumption that we are going to make, is that the match requirement is 25% of the total amount of the grant. So, we want to make sure that no matter what, the sum of the cash and in-kind match is 25% of the total amount of the grant. So we can, double check that. We have an automatic formula in here that will just give you the percentage, but make sure you're always thinking about that and you're using the right match type, which we talked about in the first one. So let's go through category by category. I will do one example for you, and then we have some pre-filled things that we'll drop in just to save us some time. So typically we're going to start with personnel. Based off the work plan and the budget, we know Thistle and Thorn will both be involved. We know we're going to need a truck driver, there's a pack shed manager, and a produce manager. So looking at personnel, the way we like to think about it is how much time are they going to contribute? So in the case of Thistle, we know they're going to be really involved in this grant project. They're going to spend 66% of their time over the next 2 years going after new contracts, expanding this aggregation business. This is going to be a lot of work for them. And we know that their annual salary is $75,000. So at 2/3 of their time, or 66% of a salary of $75,000, we're looking at $50,000 of contribution each year. So with owners, one of the things we like to think about is, is their salary covered in other places? Is this potentially a good source of matching funds? So in the case of Thistle, what we're going to propose is in year one, we're going to ask for the grant to reimburse us $20,000 of that $50,000. And in year two, we're going to do the same. So that still leaves $30,000 per year of additional work that Thistle is doing for the grant, but that isn't directly covered by federal funding. That becomes a potential source of in-kind match. So we're going to say, $30,000 a year for 2 years. So $60,000 right now of in-kind match. No cash match. And as we said, we're not using year 3 in this budget. We're going to keep moving through and do that for other categories. I'm just going to fill in the notes here so you guys can see how we're allocating other staff time. And this is going to be a conversation among the project team of, hey, who's going to be doing a lot of that work? For simplification, everyone else has an annual salary of $50,000. Thorn is going to be pretty minimal on this project. They're only going to put 10% of their time. So we're going to say the grant will cover the full amount of that. We're not going to provide any in-kind or cash match for that. Again, with the truck driver, this is going to be a new position really required for this role. And we're going to say it's about a 60% FTE role. So with that in mind, we're going to put $30,000 in each year. And sometimes I'll say one of the things I like to do is to just put in the amounts in the federal ask and then go back and adjust for match. Say, hey, I think we need to move some things. Let's move $10,000 a year from the truck driver into in-kind match. For this case, let's keep moving, and I think we'll see whether or not we're in the right ballpark. The next is 40% FTE. So over 2 years, that's 20,000 per year. There's actually an error there. So that's 20,000 per year. And that shows, in this case with Steve's already on staff. We have some money to cover their time in other ways. We're going to say 15,000 of that 20,000 a year, and we're going to provide 10,000 of in-kind match because we already know we're paying Steve's. We have some other revenues that we can use for Steve. Finally, the produce manager, again, a new hire. So we're going to say 60% FTE in this scenario, 30,000 per year. Obviously, these are going to be very individual decisions based off your grant. Often what we like to do with staff time is look for where we're already spending money and saying, hey, can we bring some of that as matching funds, as in-kind support, where folks are already doing things, already working at the organization, to help us show that we're leveraging other funds. The next category is fringe, which we talked about. Fringe is your overhead, your benefits, payroll taxes, everything that is a direct cost of having these employees work on the grant. So in this formula, you'll see we have a default percentage in the notes. So you can, right now it's defaulted to 20. If you adjust it to say 30%, you're gonna see that fringe increase. And you're gonna need to look at what your organizational fringe is. Always remember, you're gonna have payroll taxes, right? So that's gonna be 7.5%. If you have state and local, that might increase that. You're going to need to kind of think through what is our organizational fringe rate. We talked about how to calculate that in the first part of the module. So we talked about mileage, this being to and from the farmers on the project, going to different sites, covering some of the mileage of the truck. And in this scenario, right now, as of March 2025, the federal mileage rate is 70 cents a mile. So what we like to do is, you're going to have to estimate how many miles. In this case, let's say 2,000 miles a year. That might be too low, it might be too high. But for this example, we're going to say we're going to say 2,000 a year. So again, this is just going to be an estimate no matter what in a grant, because you're not going to, you can make some assumptions of 4 trips a month at 200 miles a trip. You can make assumptions about per month, we're going to go 1,000 miles. You're going to have to look at your grant budget, look at what you're doing in the project and say, here's how much we think we're going to try. For ease, I just put an estimate of 2,000 per year. So as you can see, that's 1,400 each year for a total of 2,800. And right now, I don't think we're going to use any of that as match. Mileage can sometimes be a match as well. So our equipment, we talked about a walk-in cooler and a freezer. With equipment, what you're going to want to do is obtain a quote. The quote is going to be your estimate, and it shows that you've done your due diligence, right? So we obtained 2 quotes for these 2 pieces of equipment, and we are going to ask for the full amount of each piece of equipment. So in this case, $21,000 for the medium-sized freezer and $15,945 for the walk-in cooler. Again, we're currently at 12% match. If you look down at the formula, we have to get to 25, so we're not there yet, but we're going to keep moving and see if we can do that. So our next category is supplies. Again, these are the smaller items. Oftentimes they're going to ask for unit costs. When we're doing the rough cut budget, if there's something like smallwares, maybe pots, pans, utensils, those sorts of really small items, sometimes we group them together because you don't want to have a million line items. They're still going to want to see evidence for how you came up with those numbers. So oftentimes we'll say, $20 an item for 100 items, for example. You're going to need to come up with some estimate. The best way to do that, again, is always going to be quotes. So in the case of smallwares, we want to put $2,500. We need to spend $2,500 for smallwares for our new aggregation business. Things along the way that we're going to need. We're going to split that. We're going to say, hey, let's ask for $1,500 from the grant in year one. And then we're going to spend $1,000 of our own money. So we're going to actually buy it so it can be a cash match. If someone donates something, it would be an in-kind, but in this case, it would be a cash match to the grant. Next, we're going to say, hey, we have these new coolers and freezers, and we really need to build them out. Our coolers, we need more racks for that. And we've gotten a quote that says it'll cost $4,000. And as a result, I'm going to ask for half of that in grant budget, and we're going to pay for half. Again, we have to get to that full amount, and we want to make sure that everything is adding up to that 25% match. So finally, our freezer rack, I think we have some plans around how we want to do that. I think we're going to pay for that ourselves. And our quote for that was only $1,200. So we're going to add that to the budget. And we're going to, again, pay for that directly as a cash match. So in this grant, our major category next is contractual. There might be construction in the grants you're working on, but again, that's really dependent on the grant and is rare to be seen. So moving on to contractual, and for this grant, subawards are included in contractual. Again, as we talked in the first part of the module, sometimes they'll want you to put those as other expenses. Sometimes they'll say, put them under the contractual line item. So really just looking at your grant and making sure you're following their guidance. So we know we're going to be doing a bunch of farmer interviews. They're going to have to do some help in terms of getting the aggregation business off the ground. And we want to give them some money to support them in doing that. So we're going to set aside $10,000 each year in the grant budget to support our farmers. So these are subawards. They can go directly to your farmers. They have to be named and they'll have to track their time against that. In addition, we know farmers are going to give a lot to this project to get it off the ground. We also anticipate that farmers will probably be contributing some time in addition to what we might give them. And as such, we're going to ask a small group of farmers to donate some of their time. And when they donate their time, we will put a cost to that. So to make numbers round, we're going to say that $10,000 is estimated at a cost of $50 per hour. So that $50 per hour gives you a total number of hours, and I'm just going to do it in the side over here, 10,000 divided by 50. So over the course of the project, your farmer network will provide 200 hours of support. And this is in addition to the funding they might receive through their sub-award. Sometimes we like to just put that in one line item because it's all part of a one agreement. Sometimes we'll split it out. Again, this is just for a rough cut, see where we land and kind of go from there. Okay, next up, our food safety consultant. We got a quote for this as well as the next few items, and that quote was for $6,000. So it's going to take $6,000 to work with our food safety consultant. And you know what? We have some funds that we can set aside to do that. So we're going to ask for $2,500 from the grant, and we're going to pay the remainder. Of $3,500. And we're going to do that process. So with the CoolMax refrigeration, we know, again, we're still at 13%. So we need to make sure we get up to the right amount in the totals here. And that's going to be a process for sure. So let's keep moving. So CoolMax refrigeration, that is going to be $3,500, and we're going to pay for that all ourselves. Truck rental, sometimes they'll want the truck rental as an agreement. Oftentimes that will be considered a piece of equipment. Sometimes it will be considered an other expense. So for the purpose of this grant, we had it there, but I'm actually going to move it to other. And our truck lease is going to be $9,600 a year. And we're going to definitely be asking for that out of the grant because that is, really core to this work. And finally, we included some project management support. That project management support, sometimes we like including that. That's really up to you. Grant reporting requirements, grant management. Sometimes it's nice having a team like us to work with that has experience working in these grant programs and can deal with the paperwork for you so you can focus on the outcomes. In this case, we're going to ask for $5,000 a year to support this overall grant budget. And we are going to not provide any match. So it looks like there's something weird going on in our formulas. So this is a real time, see what happens. As you can see, there is an extra 200,000 in this line. So you always want to check your formulas. We'll make sure that happens no matter what. As well as this line. And great, so we're double checking 2,800, 3,600, six. So we have something going on here. So this is, again, we like to just double check everything. All right, that looks good. We have everything looks good here. 10, And all right. So looking at our total, what you see is that our total grant request is $376,400. So overall, that is great. We are right under the amount needed for the grant budget. We couldn't go over 400, but what you'll also notice is that we are slightly low on our total. And I'm just doing a quick double check again. So if one of the things that I like to do is to see what the remainder is that we really need to match. So we're going to write out a formula just to do that. That is 300. It takes the total amount of the grant, multiplies that by 1.25. So this is the total grant volume. And now I'm seeing something that is either double counting or not. So let's double check this. We're going to just sum up our totals again. So 254. You're seeing a real-time modification. Sometimes when you start moving around rows, you get differing numbers. Here it is. So the issue here is, you can see it, is that we're double summing this by accident. So we're just going to modify that formula a little bit. And as you can see, we should be good, but it's not. All right, so what we're going to do is move a little bit more of our costs. Generally, what you're going to look for up. And that is our answer. So what we need is to move a little bit more of our costs over to get to that 25%. And so let's figure out how we're going to do that. The easiest place is usually staff time. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to say Thistle and Thorn are the owners, and we're just going to split their time. So Thorn already is contributing a match, so we're going to take, let's say, $2,500 and $2,500 a year, and then provide an additional $5,000 in match. And what's nice about that is that that will also adjust the in-kind percentage, or the fringe, and then the in-kind. So it has kind of some ripple effects. It'll decrease the grant ask a little bit, and it'll increase the in-kind. Next, we're going to look at some of the other expenses. So I mentioned travel. Let's try splitting travel again. So maybe in the first year, we're going to pay for travel. Or let's think about this differently. Is 2,000 miles a year enough? I'm going to say, you know what, we're driving a lot, and that's not the case. We're going to end up driving double that. So what I can do is say we're gonna provide that as a donation of an in-kind contribution of another 4,000 miles at 70 cents a mile. So that's 2,800. We're slowly getting to the number that we need to get to, which is above 25%. So let's talk about maybe adjusting project management support. So let's say it's $5,000 a year. Again, we're going to pay. So the other piece of this is we haven't asked for the full amount. So maybe we want to hold off, and maybe we want to say, rather than Thorn contributing 10% of their time, they're actually going to contribute 20% of the time. And this is some of the kind of like workshopping you need to do. They're going to be more involved. So rather than $10,000 total, it's going to be $20,000. And we're going to put that extra $10,000 as in-kind contributions. So as you can see, we got over the hump. So we're now at 25% of the total grant is going to this, is a match between the two matching categories. And we're going to be asking for about $370,000. So as you can see, it's a bit iterative. You're going to need to continue to say, hey, what do we have money for? What do we feel like we really need grant reimbursements for and support? And remember, you might need to modify things after you first do it. So you saw how I had to adjust, change categories, think through where was that time most valuable, or bring in other expenses like the additional mileage or increasing Thorn's time. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We're always happy to help with troubleshooting little things in the template or the tool. And then what we would do is take this rough cut budget and we'd start moving it into the budget template that's provided in the grant, as well as the budget narrative. So again, good luck with this. Take your time. Remember to have all your background information together, your work plan, your scope, your quotes, and then start working through it line by line and item by item. Thank you for walking through this demo with me. I hope it was helpful as you continue on this grant journey, and good luck as you put together your first budget.